I've seen every single film of hers, even the ones that she's acted in, because how do you not watch The Godfather? I love her. I love her moody, melancholic, intimate but bright and colorful visions. Probably not as much as her friend Marc Jacobs.
So to my friend Marc Jacobs, I'd like to present you your Half Lifetime Achievement Award.
In his words, he loves her because of her looks, her sense of style, manners and behaviors, her visions, and just how she lives her life. She is both artist and muse. Even this photo of them taken by Jürgen Teller is so Sofia Coppola. I love auteurs that have distinct styles, and Sofia is one of them. She pours her love of visual art into her works. Her soundtrack game rivals that of Wes Anderson's and Luca Guadagnino's films, in my opinion. That's not to say that I love everything that she does, and we'll discuss my qualms and criticisms about some of her films later on. I got the idea for this from Karsten Runquist and Cine Monica. I love watching their videos. I was on Stan Twitter at the age of 11, Tumblr at 14, a directioner throughout those years. I love watching movies, but thank God my celebrity obsession never turned as bad as the bling rings. The film got me interested in the real life bling ring, but the film wasn't all that interesting to me. I think the narrative of the bling ring just needs a little bit more depth and introspection. I think it's more than them just wanting to dress and live like their favorite celebrities. The characters are unlikable, which isn't really a bad thing. I mean, I love reading Ottessa Moshfegh's novels, but I just can't really connect with them. The characterization of the teenagers was quite base level, and there wasn't really much discussion over the moral dilemma of their juvenile crimes. And unlike her other films, this one doesn't really feel or look like a Sofia Coppola film, probably because it was shot on digital rather than film and she changed cinematographers. And with her other films, they might look like they're prioritizing style over substance, but you can actually dissect them. The style is the message. This one, in my opinion, just lacks both the necessary style and substance to get the message through. Sofia Coppola is a very slow and subtle visual storyteller, and I don't think that works for a heist film. For a film about chasing fame, the chase was quite slow, and in my opinion, this is her weakest film. On the Rocks is a beautifully shot film. It's sweet and I enjoyed it. It's about a father-daughter relationship, which isn't really new for Sofia Coppola. It sort of mixes the plot of Somewhere and Lost in Translation, and it reflects where the director is at her life during the making and release of the film. She and her friends or peers are probably discussing these types of things. It's fun and introspective. The reason it's so low on the list, though, is because you don't really feel the Sofia Coppola flair, which isn't really a bad thing. I just forget sometimes that she has this on her filmography. I also just don't really have a lot to say about it, other than I enjoyed it and it's a well-made film. Maybe when I watched it at the time, I just wasn't really able to appreciate it, so my opinion still might change on this one. I loved Somewhere. I think because being raised in a family that loves classic rock bands and read Eve Babbitts throughout quarantine, I have just always dreamt of staying at the Chateau Marmont. Coppola does a great job at depicting isolation in her films through color and sounds, and it's quite evident in this film. Elle Fanning is great. It's slow and drawn out, which many use as an excuse to dismiss the film and so many within the slow cinema genre or movement, but that's the charm of it. Coppola wrote the screenplay after giving birth to her daughter, Romy Mars, and it's an ode to her growing up in hotel rooms when her dad was making films. It's an ode to slow cinema. It's playful with a touch of French New Wave. It's about a man, and yet I liked it. The reason why it's in the bottom half, though, is because she just has better films, in my personal opinion. It's a film about women of different ages in this boarding school in Virginia in the 1800s. It's desire, but from the female gaze. I love the way Coppola explained the dinner scene and the nonverbal way women communicate. There's also a similar scene in The Virgin Suicides, actually, with Kirsten Dunst. Elle Fanning's character is also relatable because if I were around Colin Farrell, I would start tweaking as well. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and Sofia Coppola understood how the presence of a man in that type of setting could disrupt the dynamic like an antibody. It's also just such a beautiful Southern Gothic film, and the slow pacing of it makes sense for its plot and setting. It's just not that high enough though, because I was just looking for something. Also, after I learned that this is an existing IP, I was both in awe that she was able to make this story her own, and it really does feel like something that fits the brand. Although I was disappointed over the erasure of Hallie, who happens to be a black slave. She doesn't have to make a film about women of color, but the erasure of a key supporting character in an already established narrative is pretty questionable, and it's not like people are asking her to force a colored character into the story because there already is one and she's integral to the narrative. She probably felt like she didn't have the faculties to depict Hallie in her story, but she could have hired a black woman to help her out with this dilemma. This would have scored higher if she was able to touch on the intersections of gender and race, especially in a film set during the Civil War. I love the ending though, and I think that men should not be seen, not be heard, and not allowed to touch turtles. This is her darkest film, literally. I'm not quite sure thematically because The Virgin Suicides does exist. I'm so sorry to say this, but I think the reason why Lost in Translation is her best rated film, apart from it actually being good, is because it's not her typical girly movie. There are male audiences that can see themselves in Bill Murray's or Giovanni Ribisi's characters. Most of her films are considered pink and saccharine, whereas Lost in Translation is neutral toned and shrouded in Japan's neon lights. It is an objectively good film, save for its unintentional Orientalism. Using Japanese people and culture as props was what made me feel iffy about it. It's also just not discussed or even implied that the problem is the foreign lens in which the characters use to look at the place and its people. It could have been great, but Japan was just reduced to a background coded as weird and fantastical, while the two characters struggle about all the lives that they're not living. It discusses isolation in a world that doesn't understand them or doesn't really have a place for them, while failing to understand the world that they are currently in. There aren't any consequences to Bob and Charlotte's skewed perceptions. I don't think that Sofia Coppola explicitly made it racist. I think she was just unaware of the repercussions of seeing and painting people of color that way. In the film's case, East Asians. I'm not against non-Japanese directors making a film in Japan. Perfect Days by Wim Wenders is one of my recent favorites. Both films have similar ending scenes, in fact. Coppola just sort of, I guess, turned a very real place into an allegory for the purgatory that Bob and Charlotte were in, and it's hard not to bring it up. As per usual, the use of colors and sounds to depict the characters' emotions is skillfully done in this film. The framing and editing is top tier and gives us a glimpse at why they are at a stasis in their lives. It nailed the themes, it was just careless. Still a great film and case study on loneliness. Well, not my favorite. I think this is one of her best ones. Coppola went back to her roots and decided to make a film that is girly and sweet and Sofia Coppola.
And
You
tell
can
him that's
see
not
hints
gonna work.
of
I can't make
her
it.
new style in it, her old style and the one that she has been experimenting with since the bling perfectly culminated with Priscilla. The style, the color palette, the fashion, the editing, the mise-en-scène, she finally gave her target audience, the girls, the gays, and the theys, a film about an isolated, historically misunderstood woman in a gilded cage, yet again. She also portrayed well this feeling of seeing a relationship through rose-colored glasses, even when it's already falling off your face. I loved Kaylee Spaney in this. I do agree with the sentiment that we don't really learn much of anything about Priscilla, but then I realized that, these are the years when she was crafting her identity based off of Elvis. Priscilla didn't really start being Priscilla without Presley until after she has let go of a relationship she has had since she was 14. Even the casting suggests just how big Elvis is figuratively in comparison to just how small he makes Priscilla feel. As per usual, the soundtrack and cinematography are great. I love the 60s. I love the music, the vibe, not the racism and misogyny. It's just not like super top spots in my list, simply because I have soft spots for the next two. And I do wish the film was longer and we got to see Priscilla without the looming shadow of Elvis. The Virgin Suicides was a great debut and established the Sofia Coppola brand. Languid, soft pastel, cool-toned, lonely, with a beautiful girl, usually Kirsten Dunst, looking out of a window. This is the Sofia Coppola film, but it's ranked at number 2 simply because I have a special place in my heart for number 1 for its rewatch value. She took Jeffrey Eugenides' novel with the same name and injected her understanding of girlhood into it. I have a video essay that talks about the voyeurism and male gaze in the film for anyone who wishes to see that discussed. It's girly, but it's dark and messy. She portrayed on screen this sort of gilded cage that the girls were in, perfectly executing why everyone in the neighborhood, especially the boys, couldn't understand the suffocation and loneliness that they feel, even though in the ending, they were the ones literally suffocating. Girls and women who have been deified by boys and men, turned into manic pixie dream girls while also being deeply misunderstood, know what the Lisbon sisters were going through. It's a great film that is for the girls, the gays, and the theys who feel stuck in this sort of prison and are dreaming of a means of escape. And the girls playing songs through the telephone to express their emotions rather than saying it out loud parallels Sophia's use of silence and sounds instead of dialogue. This film cemented her place as an indie art house darling. I don't care if this is her worst rated film. I don't care if it got booed at Cannes. I don't care if critics didn't or still don't get it. I don't care that Marie Antoinette historically benefited from the oppression of the proletariat. Actually, that's a joke. I do care, and she and her family met their end for their carelessness and exploitation of the working class, justifiably so. But this is my favorite Sofia Coppola film. It's the one film that feels the most Sofia Coppola. It's ambitious. They literally filmed it in 12 weeks at the actual Versailles Castle. And let's be honest, her best films are when she sticks to what she knows best. Being a lonely girl, even when said girl has pretty or financial/social privileges. She nails it every time, especially in Marie Antoinette. It also has my favorite shopping montage in all of film history. That one annoying girl you know won't shut up about the Converse in this one shot is me. The music is great. God, the music is great. It's anachronistic, but it works. If you're someone who loves the Barry Lyndon edit with 21 Savage, I feel like you would love this. And the costumes were amazing. The iconic Milana Canonero rightfully won Best Costume Design for Marie Antoinette. Also, coincidentally, Barry Lyndon. This is like the grown-up version of the Virgin Suicides in that Marie Antoinette literally lives in a grand pink Rococo castle, but it is still so lonely. This shot perfectly showcases just how small Marie Antoinette feels in that castle. I also think that this film does a better job at portraying feelings of isolation and alienation in a foreign country better than Lost in Translation, and it's not offensive. I can talk about the scene at the beginning of the movie where she's being stripped off of her identity, literally and figuratively, for days. With Marie Antoinette, she and her family eventually meet their end because of their naivete and cruelty. The scene where she stands on the balcony bowing to the mob rallied outside Versailles ready to take their heads shows just how out of touch they are with reality. You can really observe the opulence. Is it an eat the rich film? No. But it's not trying to market itself as such like Saltburn. You don't watch Marie Antoinette for historical accuracy or political commentary. You watch it because you get what it feels like to be a lonely teenage girl. I also wish you lived in a castle while the Strokes plays through the imaginary speakers as you eat your sweet treats and wear Manolo Blahniks. Also, you might want to recreate this scene. Overall, 10 out of 10 in my books. Thank you, Sofia Coppola Mars. So, to sum it up, her vision is pretty pervasive in most of her films. Once you're done watching, you want to lounge in your bed in melancholy, wearing lace pajamas or a big ball gown. You might want to listen to Lana Del Rey. There is something so Sofia Coppola about Sofia Coppola films. There is also just a feeling of her as an artist also being restricted, much like her characters. The restraint she exercises in her work leaves the audience wanting more, something deeper. They are very polished, and in turn, it's hard to scratch through the surface lest the porcelain gets ruined. But it could also be argued that it allows for the viewer to project themselves onto her characters. She is still an icon to the girl bloggers, the ones who rewatch her fashion ads and just feel like the world doesn't get them. Me.